How do you suggest people manage stress?
You know, stress leads to anxiety. Anxiety leads to burnout, as we talked about. It's not something that happens to you. It is something that happens for you. A natural reaction when you feel anxious and burnt out is, I've got to go to the doctor. I've got to get medicated. I've got to fix. You would not feel these symptoms in your nervous system if it wasn't there for a reason. You cannot keep going this way. Your body is literally telling you through physical symptoms like racing heart rate, racing thoughts, something has to change, whether it's your relationships with your family, because sometimes if your family are the trigger, it's really hard to realize I can't be around my family if I want to have good mental health. Or if it's the workplace, I spent 8 years at uni, I worked in every job, I worked my ass off to get the dream job, only to be like, I hate this. And that's really anxiety. Tell me like, this is not for you.
Feeling confident in your skin is so much more than what you see in the mirror.
And how can you feel good? Well, that starts from within.
Welcome to the In Your Skin podcast. I'm Christy.
And I'm Anna. Join us each week as we sit down with world-leading experts and thought leaders to delve into the latest insights, groundbreaking research, and cutting-edge advancements in wellness, longevity, and beauty. Sheena, it is so nice to have you on In Your Skin podcast. I'm going to get straight to the point. What does burnout mean?
Oh, that is a really big question. But basically, burnout is when you reach that state of just physical, mental, spiritual exhaustion. It's like, it's not just the exhaustion you have after a big day. It's that you feel it in your bones almost, that kind of exhaustion. I would say if you're feeling like that and you just, no matter how many cups of coffee you have or how good your wellness routine is, you just can't get back on track, I would say definitely burnout.
And how did you get to the point of talking about burnout?
My private practice, so I have my own private practice as a therapist, and for a while I was very much specializing in anxiety in high performance women. So women in media, you know, women in a lot of high performing roles, CEOs, that kind of thing. And all of them were coming to me too late. They'd been anxious for years now, and what they were really presenting was burnout. And so it just made sense to specialize in burnout because that was really what I was treating, was burnout, because the anxiety had been going for so long.
And is burnout the same as feeling stressed?
No. So stress is when your adrenaline, your cortisol's on the up. So it's a really kind of energetic feeling. And stress is not a bad thing. If we didn't have a little bit of stress, we wouldn't have any urge to get up in the morning or get to work on time or do any of those things. But burnout is when you've gone past the point of stress, you're now anxious and you're living in a sense of fight, flight, freeze or fawn, like those very survival mode. You've been living in survival mode for months or years, and the burnout's kind of the other side of that. Like your body is screaming at you, hey, we can't keep doing this.
Yeah.
So stress is more of like that upward feeling of like anxious, adrenaline fueled. Burnout's the other side where you're just like, I'm done. Like it's physical, it's exhausted, it's almost on the downward spiral.
So do you know if you're going through burnout?
Yes. So anxiety, again, is very hard, you know, adrenaline fueled and that kind of thing. Burnout is very much, I wish I had the energy to do all these things, but I can't say yes to another thing. I want to go. And I think that's a really important difference between burnout and depression too, because that's a big question I get is what's the difference between burnout and anxiety and depression? Because a lot of the symptoms of burnout are very common in depression, that feeling of I can't get out of bed, I'm tired, like I'm just not enjoying things. I think the biggest difference between burnout and depression is you just don't even feel like doing things anymore. You don't want to see your friends. You don't want to do all the things you used to love. You don't have the energy for it. Whereas burnout, you still want to, but you're just so exhausted, you just don't have the energy to.
That's really good differentiation anyway, because I've experienced burnout, many years ago after not listening to my anxiety that I was constantly going on and the stress and juggling multiple things, whether it was business, babies, trying to look after my health or not looking after my health. There were so many different things that just were piling up. And it actually took me, I would say, 3 years to recover from burnout. I mean, it would have been a multiple things that I was working on because the impact of it was gut issues. Yes, I wanted to go out but just felt exhausted. But it was also the things that kind of piled up after that from a health perspective. And so, are you seeing that a lot with women that you work with in particular? And who do you think would more present with burnout?
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely women who typically are high achievers, so you love getting an A+, you love that pat on the back from your boss going, you're doing really good.
It's definitely me. Yeah. I love good pat on the back.
Yeah. No, I think we're all a little bit like that. We're very much in this status-driven society, right, of like who can earn the most, look the best, do the things, and we've got to look perfect and our house has got to look perfect. So we're all trying to live up to that standard. But you're exactly right. Burnout hits when it's been years of anxiety, and often I'm seeing in my clients as well the gut issues, IBS, unexplained issues. So cortisol and adrenaline affect your organs. Now, your skin is an organ, your lungs are organs, kidneys, uterus. So a lot of my clients who have trouble falling pregnant, who need IVF, endometriosis, PCOS, if we go back, if we really dig deeper, there's some childhood trauma there that they haven't dealt with. And so that's why burnout hits so hard, because not only are you going, okay, I've ignored anxiety for years, but what's underneath the anxiety? And so I recently posted a reel about this that kind of went a little bit viral because I sort of joked that I say I'm a burnout therapist, but I'm really a trauma therapist because a lot of my clients, if I said, oh, hey, come to me and talk about trauma, they're like, I don't have any trauma. But if I say, come to me for burnout, they come. And then when we unpack a little bit, we sort of go, did your parents ever tell you loved you when you were a kid? Oh, no, never. Oh, wait, when I lost all that weight, they did. Or when I worked really hard and got that A+, I did. And it's like, oh, did they just validate who you were as a person? Oh, no. Did you ever feel safe, like you could talk about the things going on for you? No. And then you really just start to go like, okay, you had a good school, roof over your head, all the things, but your emotional needs were not met. And if anything, you were pushed in the wrong direction. So then you have to deal with all of that. And then the family dynamics going, oh my gosh, my parents, maybe I've got a narcissistic parent and I've never seen it until now because they get their validation through my achievement. So now I don't feel worthy because my parent only validates me when I'm achieving. Other than that, I don't feel love.
Oh, that's so interesting. And I totally relate to that because when I did start to unpack it, especially as I was, going to see all the functional doctors, what was wrong with me, all these things. And actually when I went and actually unpacked it from a mindset perspective and the beliefs and things that were formed as a child and why I was trying to do all these things was for external validation, I am good enough and all those kind of things. No wonder it led to burnout.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why we're all burning out because we're all trying to reach this unreachable status point, So it's just learning that I'm just as good as I am. I'm just as valuable scrolling Netflix, scrolling TikTok as I am when I'm earning money or looking a certain way. So it's really important to unpack that, but you don't realize that's what's going to happen because a lot of the women who come, they're like, oh, work's just been really stressful. They're not coming to go, oh, and I just realized that I have childhood trauma and I wasn't parented correctly and I wasn't validated. It's a lot to come to therapy or work with a therapist or a coach and you think you're coming for one thing and then one thing leads to another and it's really helpful. Like you heal so much because the body keeps score. So any emotions, any experiences that you don't process, they will get stuck in the body. And that's why, like I mentioned in the beginning, so many women who are struggling with conception have skin issues that aren't explained or, they've got kidney pain or lung pain. They're like, I don't know where this is coming from. The doctors don't know where this is coming from. I can almost guarantee that they've been living in fight or flight for years now, probably since childhood. And there's only so much your body can take. Cortisol and adrenaline actually can damage the organs. They're only meant to be for short bursts, but most of us are living our 9 to 5s, releasing that, so.
And is that why you see people probably in the same position, they might be doing the same job, but one person is stressed and the other is not?
Yep. And we all have different capacity. So, you could have two people, even two siblings raised in the same household. They will have very different experiences of that household. And there is a genetic component. I do think that some people just naturally are more can handle higher emotional ups and downs than other people, right? So there's so much that goes into it, but you're exactly right. Like two people can go through the exact same experience. One is okay through it. The other one is absolutely burnt out, exhausted, anxious through it.
It's interesting because when I think about my kids, my son, complete, I wouldn't say he's an angel, but he's just so calm, cool, collected. He's, he'll be a healer one day, and whereas my daughter, she is a firecracker and I love her for it. But I actually think about the environment both of them were born into at the time. So because it is kind of different, right? My daughter, I was highly stressed when I was pregnant with her. I had a rash all over my body. I had gut issues. I had all this stuff that I wasn't aware of, but highly stressful environment for her from day one. And so she's sensory. She's much more anxious. Things disrupt her so much more. But then my son, I had one of those beautiful pregnancies where everything was calm and I was just relaxed. And so it's interesting. Do you think we kind of even adopt, this kind of
trauma?
Yeah, trauma from an early age, even from utero?
It's tricky because on the one hand, I do want to say yes, because there is some evidence towards that. But I think it's a dangerous path to look at it from that, because we don't want mothers going, I was stressed when I was pregnant and now my kid's 12 and that's why they've got autism or something, right? Like we don't want people blaming themselves going, if I was just better,
Which
my kid.
I did. Like, to be honest, I totally did,
And it's not.
And I have those guilts where I'm like, if I wasn't so stressed, she wouldn't have all, this. But she's perfect the way she is.
And you also
But
do what you can at the time.
Yeah.
You did what you could at the time. And I think you don't want to, like you said, you don't want to come back and feel guilty for what you did at that time. And that's all you could have done.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, that was your capacity. And I do believe it's a tricky one, because I do go back and forth on it as a therapist and as a person. And, Brené Brown talks about this as well, but everybody is genuinely doing the best they can. And that can be hard to hear if you've grown up with a parent who had drug issues or mental health issues and maybe neglected you. There might be this feeling of, well, how was that the best that they can? And it's like, well, we don't know what they were going through, what their history is, what their trauma's gone through. So for you were doing the best you can with the tools you had. And that's the biggest gift you can give, that love. So I think that that's important, to not blame yourself, because a lot of mothers do that of like, oh, if I just did the Montessori method and I just did this, and we can't do that. In our society, it's damn near impossible to be the perfect mother with work expectations, the cost of living, 2 parents. You can't have one parent at home anymore. Like that, gone are the days where one parent could just stay home and the other one works, unless, there's extreme circumstances where that happened. But even then, you've got nannies, you've got daycare. Like it really is the village, right? A lot of us don't have the village. So of course we're blaming ourselves and burning ourselves out. So I think that's important. But the fact that you're even thinking about how are my kids parented, you're way above like 80% of parents. 80% of parents will just go through not really thinking about what attachment style do they have, or like, what should I do? They're literally just going through the motions, getting through the day.
If you were to give some tips to people maybe going through a situation like Christy, what advice would you give them?
I would start by doing a bit of a life audit and really going, is this a life that we want to be living? Because I think a lot of us end up living a life by default, and myself included. I sort of woke up and, from the outside it looked perfect. I had, husband, house in the burbs, nice cars, 2 perfect kids, 2 perfect dogs, like 2 perfect of everything. But I wasn't happy, but I almost fell into get married, have kids, And then you wake up and go, did I intentionally choose this life? And so if you're relating to this, I think it's important to go, what is our life looking like? And is this what we want? So if you're living in the city, but deep down you're like, I am not a city person. Why am I living here? Like all the noise, all the chaos, all the traffic, this isn't me. Like, how can we shift this? Or what do we keep saying yes to that really we should be saying no to? So all the toxic friends who are messaging you every day, or the 20 kids' birthdays you're going to on the weekend. Like, do you really have to? It's okay to just miss a couple, right? So I would be doing a bit of a life audit and going, what do we really want life to look like, and what can we start saying no to? Because I think there's just way too many expectations of all of us to be going to all the sport, doing all the things, every social event, seeing our parents, working out. Like there's so much expectation. So I think we got to say no to some stuff.
Do you think women don't say no enough?
Absolutely. We do not say no enough, and typically high achievers, because their expectations of how much they can do is way beyond what their capacity is. So we talked about capacity before. And so they think that they can take on another this, another that. Oh, can you help me move on the weekend? Oh yeah, I've only got 3 parties to go to, but sure, I'll figure it out.
Why do we do this? Why?
Because there's a guilt of, if I say no, they're not going to like me. They're going to judge me. I get my worth and my lovability through doing. A lot of people with burnout they feel uncomfortable not doing. So if we just hung out like this, just sitting on the couch, they wouldn't feel like that's enough. It needs to be doing something or achieving something. So that's why helping the friend move or going to the party, oh, I did something, rather than just being. Yeah.
Is it as easy to just say no though? It's like, if you are someone who says yes to everything, what can the people do that do say yes? They feel like they can't say no.
It's tricky. It depends on the situation, but it will feel uncomfortable at first. So it's starting with something small, or you can either start with something small or start with the thing that's bugging you the most. So for example, let's say you've got a bit of an overbearing mother-in-law and that is driving you crazy. She's at the house 3 times a week. You just feel like you can't talk to your partner. She's trying to parent your kids. Like this comes up sometimes, right?
I have a friend.
I think we've all had a friend who's gone through this, right? And so it would be her to say no and tell her partner, hey, you've got to say no too. This is a team effort, or I've got to put a boundary in place, or even if it's their own parent, because generally I would say in couples, your family, you deal with it. So let's say it's their own parent coming up too much. It would say, look, they've got to have that thing of having that conversation of going, oh, look, this, that, and the rest of it, we're just going to, we're only going to see you once a week, and then hold that boundary. That person's going to get annoyed initially, but it's really learning to sit with the discomfort of saying no. Because if you're a yes person, saying no is going to be really hard initially, because you're like, oh, they're going to hate me. This is going to ruin our friendship or our relationship. It's never going to be the same, and really just catastrophizing over nothing.
And it's also surrounding yourself with people that understand your situation and not judge you. So they allow you to say no. I think that's really important.
And actually just practice not over-explaining either. So a big part of no, particularly for people pleasers, is they feel like they've got to give this long-winded explanation. So let's say, Anna, you go, oh, hey, Sheen, do you want to catch up for a coffee on the weekend? But I'm exhausted. I've had a really big week and I kind of just feel like being a homebody. A healthy thing would be if we have a really good friendship, I just go, oh, hey, Anna, I would absolutely love to see you, but I'm just not feeling it. Can we do it next Tuesday? And you'd be like, yeah, I totally get that. I've been there. Fine. If it's the 10th time I've done that to you, you might be like, Sheen, you've got to get out of the house at some point. Or like, this is affecting us. That's different. But if I'm still new to this, I might go, oh my gosh, Anna, I've actually got this on, and then I've got to go see my mum, and then I've got this on, but let's do this another time and I'll make it up to you. And then the next time I see you, I go above and beyond, like I'm buying you a gift because I've missed a coffee or something, so that's the overcompensating for saying no too. It's just kind of like no that's enough.
I feel like that was me in my younger years, but I've learned to say no later on because I kind of know what I want. I know how I feel. And if they're not going to be happy about that, then they're probably not someone who should be in my life. So.
I also think when you become a mother too, you've obviously got a little baby or kids to start looking after, and that takes up more of your time. You kind of get a bit harder with your nose. I think you have to anyway. I guess if you don't, you do get burnt out. But, for me, I went through that stage recently, and I think it was, when I did start to say no, how much more self-love I had for myself, and then how much more I started attracting, more of the type of people that I wanted in my life.
Yeah.
And just having that energy of self-respect and those boundaries. And, yes, there were some people that kind of slipped away, but the people I've got around me now are so much, more richer in terms of relationships.
Absolutely. So no is setting a boundary. And the thing about setting a boundary is there's that quote that goes, people who do not like your boundaries are the ones who take advantage of the ones of you not having them, basically. So if someone is used to Anna just going, anytime I ask you to do something, you do it, and then one day you turn around and go, actually, I'm busy, I can't help you. If they're like used to you being their little lackey, they're not going to react well, particularly if they're not a healthy person. So initially they're going to not take the no well. Do you really want people like that around who take advantage of you, who kind of take you for granted? We don't want that. And so learning how to set boundaries and say no, it is a filter for the people in your life, because there are going to be people who go, I get you, I've been there, totally get it. And then there's going to be the people who are like, well, what about when I did this for you? Sort of having that almost the opposite reaction of, how dare you say no to me, or because I've said yes to you so much. And you really don't want people like that. So you're exactly right. Like attracts like. The more you have self-respect, self-love, strong boundaries, the more you're going to attract friends, family, workplaces even who have self-love, who have boundaries and that kind of thing, because, the people who don't, they're not going to react well.
Yeah. What about, because that's in the workplace, right? It also applies. But what if you're in a situation right now where your boss is really demanding and expecting a lot of you? And how do you start to put boundaries up and you've been saying yes all the time?
It's hard in a workplace where people you've been pigeonholed into, there's always that worker who goes above and beyond. And what happens? They end up getting the work most of the time because everybody knows she'll get it done. You give it to her, she'll get it done. They don't give it to the lazy people, or they don't give it to the people who have strong boundaries. They will always give the work to the person who goes above and beyond and is willing to burn themselves out for the company. The tricky part is if you've been in an organization for a while and they kind of know you as that person, can be hard to break that role. That's why it's so much easier to do it in a new organization or a new job, because you can kind of walk in and go, I'm not going to let that happen again. Or if you're in that organization but you shift into a different role, it's almost like a little bit of a fresh start where it's like, if I'm stepping up or I'm in a different role, I'm going to hold myself differently. So I think it's important to have those conversations. And then if you want to have that job, but you need to start setting boundaries in that job, it would be really good to talk to your manager and say, look, I've been going above and beyond because the work expectations are greater than what is capable, like people are capable of, but I've been meeting it, but I'm burning myself out doing it. I'm going to set some boundaries around that. If your workplace is not supportive of that, that is not a healthy workplace. And so I wouldn't be blaming yourself for that. I would be looking at that workplace and do you really want to be in a toxic workplace, And so really thinking about your career goals, because it's hard. Sometimes certain jobs are stepping stone to others. So if you're there's a lot of the time people come to me and they're in a situation where they're sort of in one job to kind of get to the next job or the next role. So they don't want to give up the job. It's a bit of a tricky situation. So even giving yourself a deadline of it's not great here, they are crossing my boundaries. Do I feel okay to do 6 months? Is there a sense of relief knowing I've just got to stick it out for 6 months and then I'm out, or 12 months? Because I think not having an exit out is when you just get so overwhelmed. You just feel like, is it going to be like this forever? But if you kind of set a deadline like, yep, 3 months and I'm out, 6 months and I'm out, it just goes, you kind of don't take it as seriously. You're like, whatever happens, it's going to be okay.
Kind of goes the same for relationships too, right?
Relationships, yeah, you name it.
And just when it comes to society and society's expectations, does that contribute to burnout?
Absolutely. So I think it's really important to have this conversation because, yes, there's all the internal stuff that happens, our self-beliefs, our self-talk, our personal experiences that we've had in our families and our childhood. So there's definitely individual factors that contribute to this, but the societal ones are, social media is massive. So if you have a generation of us who haven't been validated and then you give us a platform where we can seek validation from strangers.
It's all about validation.
It's all about that and worthiness and feeling and that feeling. So how can I create a feeling of validation and worthiness and success without all the external? How can I almost create that from an internal feeling? And it's basically setting your own personal goals, both intrinsic and extrinsic. So extrinsic goals would be, I want to have a certain house, or I'd love to live in a certain area, or I want to live by the beach or something like that. And an internal goal would be, I want to be a good mum, or I want to be a loving mother. And that's both internal and extrinsic as well. But am I a loving person? Would people describe me as a loving person? Can I get through my day and go, I was a really loving, caring person today? So I think it's being able to validate and find worthiness in yourself is really important. But yeah, it's societal expectations on us. Again, it's so hard to live in like a capitalistic society, right? When it's always the next big thing. It's never just, a few generations ago, you bought a house and you lived in that house your whole life. Now it's like, oh, this is my starter home. And then once we earn more money, we're going to get the next home. Yeah. And then once we earn more money, we're going to get the next home. It's just never enough. And I think this is why it's so important to come back to those really practical activities like, what is my ideal day? If I could live my ideal day, is it, living by the beach? Is it living in the country? Is it seeing friends and family every day? Really being truthful to yourself, because a lot of us, again, just end up in situations where we lived our life on default and all of a sudden we wake up and we're like, this is what my life looks like.
We were actually talking about it today, about how we wish we appreciated when we're in our 30s, when we're in our 20s, because you get to a certain age, and I'm almost 40, Chrissy's 40, and we just are kind of like, why didn't we like really appreciate where we've come from? And you are always just trying to get to the next point, to the next point, to the next point. But it's like, then the points are going to be over and you're not going to be able to live anymore. So it's really kind of absorbing yourself in the life you're living and the moment you're living.
Yeah, absolutely. And something I've been talking a bit on other podcasts and in some articles recently is a lot more people are having that midlife crisis in their 30s because it's like exactly what you're talking about. You get the house, the car, the kids, the everything, and then go, okay, I've got everything I've ever wanted and I'm deeply unhappy. I'm still burnt out. I'm still anxious. I still don't feel enough. And people used to wait till their 50s to do that, and now we're doing it earlier.
Yeah. Is that what a midlife crisis is?
Yeah. So from a developmental psychology perspective, there's different things we predict for different ages and different developmental points. And generally it used to be sort of the 50s and 60s of once you've sort of achieved certain goals in your career, that's quite common that people realize that they've been either working too much or living someone else's dream. A lot of people back then were pressured, you've got to be an accountant. There was no choice in what career they had. It was just their parents are like, you will be an accountant. You will be a lawyer, a doctor, engineer. And then they kind of wake up and go, I've lived someone else's life. Or you must marry this person. Or you must marry this type of person. So they chose someone who ticked the boxes or was good on paper, but they don't really love that person, or they haven't had that connection or things like that. So it's happening earlier though.
But how do we, I guess, so we don't get to that point, but how can we build our self-worth and know what we want?
I think working with the therapist is really important, because you need to understand what are the limiting beliefs that got you here. So for some of the high-performing women that I work with, because I work with a lot of high-performance women, there has been a sense of my childhood or my parents don't really love me unless I fit a certain box. And then if you get that from your parents, then you sort of attract a partner who might be similar feeling or thinking to your parents of, is my partner still going to love me if I gain 10 kilos, or do I just know that they would leave me, right? Because if your parents taught you have to look a certain way, be a certain way, otherwise you're not lovable, you sometimes attract a partner like that. And that's not nice to feel like that love is conditional. It's not about who I am internally. It's about, I meet your ex, I'm good on paper for you. You don't really love who I am or how I go about being. Does that make sense?
Is that where those attachment styles come in?
There is some thought in relationships sometimes, and this is again where burnout in relationships can happen. And the holistic psychologist, Dr. Nicole LaPera, talks about this too, is when you haven't done the work after leaving home. So you leave your parents' house. If you don't do the work before you get into your relationship, which I know I basically went from living with my parents to living with my boyfriend, who then ended up being my husband, right?
That was me too.
Yeah. So I didn't do this work.
I cried when I left home. I loved home so much. I was like, I don't want to leave my mum and dad.
I know. I was the baby too. So I was like the last one out. So they were really attached to me too. But sometimes what can happen is you unconsciously, this isn't something we do, we think that we're going to do this. It just kind of naturally happens, is we choose what feels familiar, even if it's toxic, even if it's not great. If it feels familiar, that's what we'll gravitate towards. And so if your childhood or your parents or your family wasn't the healthiest, you'll sometimes attract someone who's very similar to the way you grew up, because there's a part of you that wants to resolve that. It wants to see that out and heal that. Now, if you get into a partner or a husband like that, you can grow together. I don't want to say that you have to end things, but, I know certainly for me, I went through a separation about 18 months ago. And I had to do a lot of reflecting during that time, before, after, everything. And there were a lot of aspects of that relationship that replicated some of the things that weren't so great in my childhood. Mm-hmm. There were amazing things that happened in my childhood, but there were definitely certain things that weren't ideal. And I was replicating that in my relationship. So once I started growing and healing as a person, I didn't want that in my life anymore. But that was such a big part of my life. So I had to really sort of let go of that person and that relationship, so I didn't keep having that pattern play out.
This podcast wouldn't be possible without the support of our sponsor, Whoop.
Hey, Anna, what was your sleep score last night?
Well, wouldn't you like to know? No, it was 87%. What did you get?
100%.
Of course.
Whoop has me dialed in.
Okay, tell me a secret.
Well, I've been going to bed really consistently, and I've been taking my Into Magnesium supplement, of course. Plus, Whoop tracks my sleep performance, how much sleep I got versus what I actually needed. It even breaks down into 4 stages: awake, light, REM, and deep sleep.
Well, that's what I love about it. Whoop auto detects my sleep and it helps me stay consistent. Plus, the sleep coach gives me a personalized bedtime, so I wake up feeling refreshed.
Exactly. Sleep is the foundation to everything. Recovery, performance, and even how I feel during the day. Whoop helps me optimize it.
Well, want better sleep? Well, head to whoop.com and get a free month when you sign up. If you want to try it yourself, sign up at joinwhoop.com/inyourskin and get your first month free.
And so you're working with women who are potentially going through similar things, and are needing to build up their self-worth, what kind of advice would you give them?
It's a journey. Like none of this work can be done fast. So when, you see these 6 weeks to confidence courses and stuff, be hesitant on that. But I certainly think having a therapist it's almost like your GP, right? So like if you have a doctor, you usually don't have them for 1 or 2 years, right? Like you'll have your regular doctor. So you might go for them for pregnancy and then you might go to them for, I don't know, like all different kinds of health issues. Finding a good therapist is the same. It's almost like that person that you might come to them when you're in your 20s and you're like, I've had my first boyfriend and now I'm really anxious and I don't know what to do. And then you might come to them again when you're getting married and the wedding stress is happening. And then you might go away for a couple of years. You go back to that therapist again when you might have postpartum stuff and there's a baby. Therapy is not a one and done thing.
And I also feel like with therapy as well now, the stigma has been taken off that, because I know back in the day, whether it was maybe 10 years ago, if you were going to see a therapist, there was something wrong with you and you didn't really want to talk about that because you thought, oh, there's something wrong with me. I'm not going to tell anyone I'm seeing a therapist. But a lot more people are now more open to that, which I love. Like I think if you want to go see a therapist every week, then go and see a therapist. If that's going to help enhance your life in some way, then I think go and do it.
And I think we need to change a bit of the narrative of it's a personal development. I think there is still, we've gone a long way, but I think a lot of people might, I don't know, go to a health coach or someone who's maybe not qualified if they want to do personal development, not realizing that like all that positive stuff is attached to the shadow and it all is integrated. If you have goals you want to achieve, you've got to look at what's the stuff that's been holding you back. And I think a lot of people see a coach thinking, I don't want to go there, but you can't. It's like the moon has two sides, right? Like you have to look at both. And so I think realizing like, yes, you can go to a therapist for mental health, but you can go for personal development. You can go for your relationship. You can go for grief. There are so many reasons you could go to a therapist, and again, for high performance. So a lot of the women who come to me, they're already doing quite well. They realize I want to stay here or I want to get to the next level of my career, of my business or whatever, but I want to do that without burning out or without never seeing my kids. So how can I structure things and do things in an intentional way? So I think knowing you can go to psychologists, social workers, counselors for that is really important too.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's sitting in the uncomfortableness, really. And that's a good thing because that's where the growth happens, I think, like for me personally, I've seen a coach, therapist, everybody, I guess, since I was 22, really. I've been reading books and it could be listening to podcasts initially, whatever it is, but just plugging in. So you can start to realize, okay, what are some of the stories that I'm telling myself that are holding me back or that I'm stressing me out? Stress is such a big thing for women, I think, especially. And for myself, we've recently, Anna and I have a little bet going on that we're not allowed to say we're stressed.
Yeah, it was a big thing because I feel like every time I'd say I was stressed, I'd feel probably more stressed. And as soon as we stopped saying that we were stressed, we were like, oh, we're not as stressed anymore, which was crazy to think that's all that we had to do. And like there are times when we're still a little bit stressed. Yeah. But at the same time, it's like just stop thinking you're stressed and that can actually be super positive.
And it goes back to those beliefs that we were talking about is, I know something that's really helped me through my separation and it was a growth thing. I had to go through it too is, I can handle anything. I can handle this. Everything's figure outable. So when I have a situation come up, I could either go, oh my God, how am I going to deal with this? Like I'm stressed, or I can go, I can handle this. And if you just teach yourself that's your default thinking of I can handle this, everything's going to work out, everything's figure outable, like taking a step. I think it's not only a belief thing, but it's also an affirmation too. And it's coaching yourself to think that way because initially you're probably not going to believe it. It's probably going to feel like, not real, but you can train yourself to really genuinely believe that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's important to have coaches and to be keeping each other accountable. I think for us,
we're always comparing.
We're always comparing because we've just started using, well, actually we've been using Whoop for a long time, but recently we've been comparing because just even measuring our stress levels and just knowing, okay, where is that at? Am I straining too much throughout the day? I think that's been something that I've loved using Whoop for.
And also just knowing that it's like, okay, if you are stressed, okay, how do we deal with that? What are the things for me personally that I like to do? That might be go to get a massage, go for a little walk. How do you suggest people manage stress?
Stress leads to anxiety. Anxiety leads to burnout, as we talked about. And so there's your low-hanging fruit, which are your easy things that are easier to do, and then the ones that are are harder to do but are going to have a bigger impact. So low-hanging fruit is get your sleep sorted. The amount of women who come to me and their sleep is all over the place, and I'm like, half the work we're going to do is if you could just get your sleep better, you're going to feel better. Sleep affects everything, and I'm sure you see it on your Whoop status. So when you're tracking your sleep, but you'll see you're hungrier the next day if you haven't slept well. Your hormones are going to be affected. Everything gets affected by sleep. So that's a really big thing. Sleep, I know it doesn't sound easy, but if you're versing, okay, I'm going to get my sleep sorted versus spending months talking about childhood trauma and some stuff, I would try and get the sleep sorted first, right? Even things like drinking enough water. I know it sounds silly about how does that affect my mental health and my sleep, but even the naturopath that I work quite closely with, because I always make sure my clients get blood tests, get their vitamins, nutrition sorted as well, which is another thing. But, we always look at, are you drinking enough water? Because even a 2% dehydration can affect your mood, your energy levels. So water, getting all your vitamins and minerals. I mean, I know you guys are really kind of on the health bandwagon, so you know this, but a lot of the time, once we do the bloods on someone, their B vitamins are out or they're iron deficient. I mean, you feel like shit. You just want to go to sleep if your iron's out or if your B vitamins are out. And sometimes those things, getting that sorted can be so much better. So sleep, exercise, eating, if you can, that's kind of like the core basis. If you can get that part sorted, then we can look at the deeper, sort of more impactful things like self-belief, like self-worth, all of that.
It's always about taking a holistic approach, which I think is really important. And do you think we see society as it is today because we're living in it? Has it always been like this when it comes to burnout?
No. And don't get me wrong, society, so previous generations really were in survival mode in that, there were world wars going on, there was famine, there was real, genuine poverty. So I don't want to say that there wasn't burnout the way we see it, but the burnout was from different causes, right? And it was a genuine, it wasn't sort of mentally created. It was like there was a genuine reason to feel that stress, like, family members are passing away, all of that sort of stuff, right? Nowadays, a lot of it is mental and the environment we're in, right? Like we're constantly dealing with traffic and chaos. Like none of our day is slow. I know for lots of the women that I work with, the morning is chaos, getting themselves out the door, the kids out the door, getting to work on time.
It's mayhem.
Yeah. Getting, when you're at work, there's no reprieve. If you actually take a lunch break, it's like a whole big deal, because if they know that you never take your lunch break and you always work through lunch and then you set a boundary of, I'm actually going to take my 30 minutes. It can be shocking for some people. Then you get home, then it's feed the dogs, feed the cats, feed the kids, feed yourself, get a workout in, make sure you make love to your husband. Like you're trying to tick all these boxes, right? If he's lucky. Like you're trying to sort of mentally go through what are the things I'm supposed to do. We were never this busy. Like never in history have we been this busy. And not just that, but the amount of information that we get in. So
but it's the world we're living in. So what do? We have to feed our kids. We have to go to work.
Yes.
We have to drive to the office in traffic. What do we do about it?
So it's twofold. One is really looking at that internal stuff like we talked about. Why do you feel the need to go above and beyond? Like why is it so hard for you to pull back? Why do you have to go above and beyond constantly? Like what would average feel like to you? sort of thing.
I don't know.
For some people, or it's actually, again, going back to when you work with the therapist, like there's a lot of visualization tools that I get people to really tune into their body, use their intuition, but really asking if you didn't have any obligations, if money wasn't an issue, if you could do whatever you want, what would your day look like? And for a lot of them, again, like we talked about previously, it's realizing I never wanted to live where we're living. I don't want 2 kids in an apartment, but that's all we could afford. And it's like, well, why are you doing that? If that's genuinely not who you are, why are you here? And they're like, I don't know. And so it's actually going, maybe we should sell the apartment and move to the country and actually doing something physical, like changing your environment. If you know that environment's no good for you, why are you staying there? Same with being in a toxic workplace. Why are you still there if you hate it? You don't like anyone. And for some people, it's just a habit. If you've been at an organization for 5 years, 10 years, pays okay, it's really hard. It's really scary to leave that because that's your comfort zone. So it's really asking yourself, what do you think would happen if you took another job? Or better yet, start your own business. You could make 10 times what you're making.
Yeah. It is really about taking that first step, because I've been in those situations before, and I was a lawyer and I felt like I was going to just do it forever, even though I didn't like it, because I was too afraid to sort of step out of that and try something new. So if someone was in that situation and they want to get out of it, but they are too afraid, what advice would you give?
You don't have to take action right now. I think sometimes it feels like I have to do something right now. Sometimes the first step is going to a therapist or talking to someone about it, finding a way to get your head clear, because sometimes when we take action from an unaligned or an anxious place, and you can see this from a spiritual perspective or a psychological perspective, if you're taking place from like a low vibration, a low frequency, or just, not in a good space, if you're taking action from that place, sometimes it makes things worse. You're not thinking clearly. You're sort of just trying to Band-Aid things. So I would really try to get some space from the situation, whether it's that you start going to therapy, whether it's you just book a week off where you just go hang out with your parents, or go to a farm, or go to the beach, or go on a holiday. Because I think most of us have had that experience where you go on holiday and you come back and you're like, I can't work for my work anymore. Or I can't hang out with my friend anymore. I've been so peaceful on this holiday, and it's because I haven't been in XYZ situation. So I think giving yourself that grace that you don't have to figure it out right now, but you do have to do something. So,
because if you don't do something, you get burnt out, and it can cost you a whole lot more. And that's coming from someone who has experienced burnout.
Yeah.
And it took me 3 years to recover from it, and thousands of dollars with practitioners, therapists, everybody to really heal again. So do you know how many people actually are experiencing burnout?
Well, it's hard across populations. I work with a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs and things, and they think about 74% of entrepreneurs have experienced burnout. Wow. So that's a lot.
That's a lot. Does it depend on whether you're a female or a male when it comes to burnout?
I don't think so. I haven't seen the stats between women and men, but I think it's more your personality type. So I've got a quiz on my website where you can figure out your burnout type. But there's two that are called the high achiever and the leader, and they're what we call a hyper aroused state. So they're those people that when something stressful happens, instead of shutting down and pulling back, that's a different personality type. I've got to take action. I've got to fix this. I've got to go above and beyond. And as you can see, like if that's your reaction when stress happens, I'm stressed, so I've got to do more, but that's going to make me more stressed. But then I do more when I'm stressed. It's like this constant cycle. So those are the types that definitely burn out more. But I think one thing I want people to understand about burnout and anxiety is it's not something that happens to you. It is something that happens for you. Because I think a natural reaction when you feel anxious and burnt out is I've got to go to the doctor, I've got to get medicated, I've got to fix. You would not be born with the ability to feel these symptoms in your nervous system if it wasn't there for a reason. The reason is you cannot keep going this way. Your body is literally telling you through physical symptoms like racing heart rate, racing thoughts, that physical symptoms like you had to see that functional medicine doctor. It's you cannot keep going. Something has to change, whether it's your relationships with your family, because sometimes if your family are the trigger, it's really hard to realize I can't be around my family if I want to have good mental health, right? If I don't want to be anxious, that's big. Or if it's the workplace, again, for a lot of us, myself included, I spent 8 years at uni. I worked in every job. I worked my ass off to get the dream job, only to be like, I hate this. And that's really anxiety provoking. But the anxiety was there to tell me like, this is not for you.
And you do feel like I had a friend back in school who I just remember always feeling there was something not right with our friendship. And as soon as we stopped becoming friends, it was like this weight that lifted off my shoulders. And I kind of felt like she's a great person, but we just weren't great as friends. And it was just like that weight. And I feel like, okay, now I can move on. And I think that goes with all the things that you've been saying about you've just got to, if it is your family, you might have to separate yourself, even if it's just a little bit more than what you're doing at the moment. But it's really sort of, surrounding yourself with the people that are really going to uplift you and your life and get rid of the people that aren't doing that.
Exactly. Anxieties and burnout are an opportunity for you to be real with yourself and truthful to yourself about what's working and what's not. So again, the amount of women who come to me and they go, I think it's just my work. Like I'm just so burnt out from work. And then you realize like they haven't had sex for 6 months with their partner. Them and their partner aren't connecting. And then you dig a bit deeper and they're like, I don't know if I'm happy in my marriage, but I'm so scared to face that because of the ramifications of kids, houses, money. It's like they know that this thing is lingering, but that's what the anxiety is. It's like, I'm going to get you to face what you're not facing, whether that's work, relationships, family, friendships, And I love that quote. Oprah was the original one to say it, and then Kim Kardashian said it again. But it's like, you can love someone but not have them in your life, right? So you can love your parents deeply and admire them even, but know that when you're around them, they're just triggering. And so it's okay to love them from afar. Same with your friend. You can acknowledge she's a great person, all of this, but when I'm around her, it's just not good for me. So I love you, but from afar.
Yeah.
And that's okay. And same with jobs too. Like there's some workplaces that are great for other people, but not for you. And that's okay as well.
I like how you put that. It was really nice. Now Sheena Schuy has said it. I like Kim Kardashian and Oprah.
Yeah. I didn't get the quote exactly right. I need more coffee for that, but yes.
So many great insights. And I know our listeners would have, got so much out of this conversation, and hopefully we'll take some action and, whether it's going to see a therapist, sleeping more, exercising, maybe blocking that friend that's really triggering that. But I think there was so much in there and so many amazing insights that you shared with us today. So thank you.
Oh, thanks for having me. It was such a good chat.
We always ask our guests one last question. What does feeling great in your skin mean to you?
Oh, that's a great question. What have other people said? I'd love to know.
Everyone said something different. So it's what it means to you.
Okay, so can you ask me the question again?
So what does feeling great in your skin mean to you?
Feeling great in my skin is when I'm living for me and nobody else's expectations. When I'm working out for me to feel good, now not how I'm going to look to someone else when I'm doing things like working or whatever it is. If I'm doing it for me, that's when I feel good in my skin.
Love that.
Yeah.
So good.
Thank you so
And
much.
where can we find you? On social media, website?
Yeah, definitely. So I have my podcast as well, Burnout to Brilliance. It's all the places. And then on Instagram's my main hangout at Sheena Holistic Therapist. And you can also find me on TikTok. I have a little bit of different content there.
I'm going to go check it out. I haven't
know.
seen your TikTok.
I love TikTok. I feel a bit more free on there. So you can find me. It's sheena.schuy on there.
Great. Awesome.
Thank
Thanks
you
so much.